Ah yes, the original Avatar movie, made in 2009 in the time of iPod touches and fireflies. Everyone forgot this movie until the sequel came out almost 14 years later. But that inspired me to revisit one of my earliest thoughts when I watched this movie as a 6-year-old. I always wondered how a hyper-advanced and militaristic human expedition was defeated by an army of tall blue people with bows and arrows. I guess they had dragons and shit as well. So in this video, I'm going to be covering all the mistakes the humans made, any new methods they could have used to defeat the Avatar, and ultimately conquer Pandora. So in this movie, the villains will finally win. As usual, we'll start by summarizing the beginning of this movie, because you know, it's old as shit, and then as slowly we start to see the humans make mistakes, we'll address them from there. We start off following a crippled marine named Jake Sully, who talks about the state of current Earth. It's pretty overcrowded and very shit. After getting into a bar fight with another man for hitting a woman, we can easily see Jake is probably going to be a good guy within this movie. After getting thrown out of the bar, he's approached by two Matrix-style agents, who tell him they're here to talk about his brother. You see, his brother was a super important, highly classified military asset, and somehow he got robbed to death with a knife on the street. Well, yeah, just know he's dead. And you see, the reason why the government wanted to talk to Jake is because him and his brother were twins, meaning he could take over his brother's contract since they have matching genetics. We could see Sully take some time to think about it, but we know he says yes because he later wakes up inside of a space station headed towards a mysterious planet. As they arrive on Pandora, we can see humans start doing human things. They're building factories, mining, and establishing military facilities. Here we're also introduced to Colonel Miles, who's the chief of security and an obvious bad guy. Meanwhile, Sully was brought into this planet because they cloned a Na'vi using the DNA of his twin brother. They want him to mind control this Na'vi so they could infiltrate their society. Well, my friends, I know it's only 10 minutes in this movie, but I've already thought of a way the humans could have taken this to their advantage and won. Simply engage in biological warfare and gas the entire planet. I know it seems very cool to clone these blue guys and turn them into spies, but it's way more efficient to take that research and use it to build a virus or some sort of gas that can wipe out their population entirely and not affect humans. It should be much easier to figure out through their genetics what their weaknesses are and exploit them than it is to clone a fuck ton of them. And think about it, this is not unrealistic at all, because we could already do this in modern times. So what's stopping them 500 years in the future from doing this as well? Was that solution too German for you? If so, keep watching, we got a lot more of the movie to go. Back in the movie, we see an interesting dynamic between Sully and the head of the research team, Dr. Augustine. She doesn't seem to like how Sully's brother, who had a PhD, got replaced by a Marine with no education. So she complains about this to her boss, who lectures the fuck out of her on how this is a mission for profits, not for science, and that she needs to use Sully to secure a diplomatic relationship with the Na'vi so they can harvest more of this expensive mineral. You see, this is another mistake on the human end. You should have never hired a scientist that is there for the actual science. You'd want to find one that is there for the profits. I'm willing to bet you could have went and drafted someone from Big Tobacco or Big Pharma to do this job, and they'll actually put profits first. Later, Augustine puts Jake into his Na'vi body and he's able to meet the other members of the research team who did the same, including the doctor herself. He seemed to be overjoyed that he's now able to use his legs again. When I first watched this movie, I just wondered how fucked it would be if he was still disabled after transitioning. After Jake goes to sleep in his Na'vi form, he wakes up in his human form, and he meets a girl who introduces him to the Colonel. To be honest, the only person I'd want to be introduced to is her. She's really fucking hot. How did I not remember her from the first time I watched this movie? The Colonel talks about how dangerous the planet is, yada yada, while hopping into this Titanfall-ass suit, and tells Sully to be an informant of his, work with the science people, but report to the military so they can learn how to take down the Na'vi. Later, Sully sets out on a solo adventure to find some Na'vi, but he gets attacked by some dogs. But he's saved just in time by a female Na'vi named Natiri. She brings him high into the jungle to show him around the land. However, these sky sperm cells start landing on him, and apparently it means he's a chosen one or something. But before long, they're ambushed by a group of Na'vi warriors, and he's brought to their homeland under the sacred tree, where he meets the chief. He's interrogated, and they let him stay and find a place to sleep. After which, he transitions back into his human form and speaks with the Colonel and the boss of the operation. He still seems eager to do the mission as he was asked, and is given 3 months to get the Avatar to move off their homeland so they can harvest the minerals underneath it. Now, the humans probably should have thought of some precautions in case the humans in the Avatar bodies like it so much that they start defecting away. Firstly, it's only a matter of time before there's some sort of romance between human-controlled Na'vi and the real ones. You see, this would greatly distract from the mission and maybe even make the people sentimental. So what they should have done is, in creating these avatars, they need to neuter them like dogs. That way they don't get sexually attracted to those of the opposite sex. It's basically like taking taking nofap to the next level, you know what I mean? And in addition to that, they need to have some sort of questionnaire or lie detector test that can determine whether or not someone is still loyal. If you've watched this movie, you know both of these would prevent the downfall of the humans by the end of the movie caused by Sully. Also, you guys remember that scene where he's able to meet the entire village under the tree? The humans should have just pulled out Osama bin Laden and sent him in with a suicide bomb to blow up the entire village or at least destroy the leadership of the tribe. I'm sure at this point, Sully wouldn't even mind, since it's just his avatar body being destroyed. To continue with the plot, after a very awkward first night with the natives, Sully returns to his human body. He's able to brief command and tell them the reason the natives won't move off their land is because they worship a sacred tree. I don't know if it's just me. If the reason why they're staying is because of a tree, I would immediately Vietnam the entire forest and burn it to the ground. Because think about it, you're gonna need to bulldoze the entire forest anyways. In the next part of the movie, it highlights a big strength that the Na'vis have. They can basically bond with wildlife and ride dragons. Jake has even able to cop himself the biggest dragon as well. But if I were the humans and I learned about this advantage, I would try to capture these dragons and genetically modify them into extinction. You see, one piece of technology that humans have today is we can take male mosquitoes and genetically modify them so their offsprings will only be male. And that'll essentially breed the population out of existence, since there will be no more female mosquitoes. Should have just done this to the dragons, and now without the dragons, the Na'vis don't have any vehicle or way to fight you through the sky. We could also see throughout the movie, Jake is falling in love with Neytiri in his avatar body, and they're about to do the Rule 34 stuff. But just saying, if they neutered him like I said they should have, then this would have never happened. They eventually do, and he gets fully initiated into the avatar tribe. However, as he transitions back into his human body, the human tractors start coming by and tearing down all the trees. And this is where full-scale war between the human and the Na'vi get kicked off. And things aren't looking great for Jake either. In the meantime, the Colonel finds out that he's a traitor because he fought back against the tractors, and the Avatar tribe also want Jake dead because they think he caused this since he's an outsider. And they're kind of right, because he kind of did give away all their intel. There's some back and forth arguments between the military people and the scientific people, but the military people eventually win out, and they're like, fuck it, we just want to tear down all these fucking trees no matter how important they are to the people and take all the valuable minerals. You see, the military figured out that the Avatar would never leave their home tree, thanks to Jake's interview. So I actually really like their approach on how they went about it. They just decided to blow up the entire tree using gas and incendiary bombs. That did get me wondering though. You came with all this fancy military equipment and didn't have like a nuke or a long-range ballistic missile? Because there are definitely ways in the modern world you can destroy that tree and destroy anything around it. Had they just destroyed the Avatar with the tree, they would not have the issues later in the movie. The military also imprisons all the scientists so they can't disrupt military operations, but they're quickly freed by that hot pilot from earlier in the movie. I mean, fuck, if there's only 3 people that know the human secrets and weaknesses, you're seriously having one fat fuck guarding them? Like, at least get 5 to 6 people guarding them, separate them into other cells, or just execute them on the spot. This would solve all the issues you have later in the movie as well. And even if you didn't want to imprison or execute the scientists, you could have at least shut off all the electricity to their complex machines so that this way they can't travel into Avatar bodies. But anyways, the scientists are able to escape and join the Na'vi. But that made me realize one big shortcoming of the humans. How come every single craft, ship, or boat they have is human controlled? Do they really not have surveillance drones that they could just use to follow the humans and figure out where they're hiding? Or maybe even suicide bomb the humans? Because if they did that, Jake wouldn't have a giant ass dragon that he somehow conquered. In the meanwhile, the Colonel is giving pep talks as if he's about to head to a football game, and the humans are getting ready for all-out war. And I realized the humans just made a shit ton of mistakes during this battle. They immediately start off by sending their ground force into a forest. Like, don't you have like a recon unit that can at least tell you the giant creatures that are waiting for you? Because it seems as if they were caught completely off guard. They don't even know the creatures in the forest. Just send in like 3 to 4 people to report back to you before sending in your main force, so at least you know what you're dealing with. And also, they need to update their radar technology if their ships can't detect giant dragons flying right above them. Not only should you be detecting them, you should be fucking shooting them out of the sky. Because if you look at Israel right now, their Iron Dome can literally intercept RPG rockets. Okay, I just need some bullets to intercept some dragons here, alright? But yeah, since the human don't do this, their entire fleet is defeated, and the Colonel goes after the remaining humans who are controlling the Avatar bodies. And that part got me thinking. In the game Titanfall, where the Titans wear suits very similar to what the Colonel is wearing, they have a self-destruct feature, so if the pilot wants to eject, they could just blow up the entire suit. If they had that in this movie, the Colonel, before he died, he could have at least suicide bombed all the scientists to take them down with him. And before the Colonel was attacked, as soon as he saw the pod that housed the scientists that controlled the Na'vi, he should have just fired bullet holes into it. This would buy him enough time for Jake's human body to die, that way he couldn't control the Na'vi Na'vi, and the Colonel could probably win that 1v1 fight against Neytiri instead of getting shot twice in the chest with a giant arrow. Alright, and now just an overall critique of the final assault. Why did the humans decide to launch an all-out invasion where they were sending in 100% of their force? They should have just waited for more humans to arrive so they can invade with a much larger force, or they could have played the long game, slowly expand their territory and push out the Na'vi until they can't fight back. You know, early settlers already did that to the Native Americans, so clearly it works. And finally, they could have just went with a smaller expedition and did hit and run attacks, just like they did with that giant tree. Seemed to work out just fine. But hey, now that you watch this video, if you ever plan on invading a planet full of blue people, now you know how. Don't forget, if your dick is bigger than 2 inches but smaller than 8, you must like, comment, and subscribe. And go watch my other vids so I can earn some money. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your day and rest of your life, unless of course you did not subscribe. This is Andrew from Obsessive Films signing out. Goodbye.